coffee later, and welcome back to Gex 3D Enter the Gecko Commentary with me, Skully the Metalhead. Today, we are going to be continuing our parts to a respectable length this time with a good 19 minutes on our backs, and we'll be going through... I think this is the second last horror level trope thing that we have in the game. This is Poltergex, an amazing level pun that I love to death, and I'd say it's probably my favourite of the... It's either my favourite or second favourite of the horror trope levels, because there's just so much to see and explore in this level, and just quite a bit to do. Also a new power-up to play with, which, though it isn't exactly much different from the fire power-up, it is something that I do think is at least pretty interesting. A similar set of missions though. There's still a mission to destroy 8 blood coolers instead of, I believe it was the original 5, so not too much different. But to me, I think there is a lot more to explore, and a few new areas, which will provide some intrigue. What do I mean? Well, you'll just have to see. Also a lot more ghost pits, or ghost areas I should say, one of which actually becomes a bit of a major puzzle, in the sense that you have to navigate your way through an area which I think is actually right below here. Whether or not we get to the new upgrade in this part, I'm not too sure. I think we do though, because there is one in this area. I initially thought that was actually dangerous to step on back when I first played this. Like, I just thought it was, I don't know, increasingly dangerous. Anyway, you see the new, light blue coloured fly. Why, what the hell did... Oh, it's because of one of those faces. Yes.
The Imperial fleet would never...
I'm kind of surprised that it actually does damage Gex, considering how slow it is. Not to mention that it doesn't really seem like it's doing that much. I suppose the fact that it is biting implies that it does have teeth, but it's not really visible, so I wouldn't really know. That being said though, I do really like the atmosphere that's provided from the Haunted Mansion levels. Which, another fun fact, and a little something that I'm probably going to expunge a little bit later, is that, a lot of these Haunted Mansion missions were actually features that were planned to be included in the original Gex game. Because for those of you who are in the know about the haunted levels in that game, where it took place in a graveyard for the most part, yeah, they were planning to include Haunted Mansion levels similar to this, although it was more so done utilizing the Sega Mega Drive's Mode 2, which was basically what allowed for, you know, again, I'm not necessarily sure what it is. It was basically like, I can't remember the game example for what it was either. I think it was like, rail chase or something, or race and chase. Again, I'm not necessarily sure what the exact name for it is. But, yeah, basically would have meant that Gex would have been just running purely forward as he dealt against enemies. I suppose, to use an adequate example, it probably would have been a little bit more like a slightly more restrictive version of Doom. The way in which that game handled pseudo 3D visuals. But that in and of itself contains like a whole nother different backstory regarding the development history of that game, which I suppose I could probably expunge right now, because why not? Got a whole 11 minutes of this section to go through, so why not? Anyway, when I was doing some research to find some more trivia based on this game, I actually, well, it started as a search on TV tropes, which I thankfully managed to avoid getting lost on that site for hours, because goddamn is TV tropes addictive. And a site that I love to death, and I need it because it's like drugs, and just hook it up to my veins. But anyway, and yes, I did completely skip over the ice power-up, which has an awesome freezing ability, as you can just see there. I don't know, it just looks so amazing. I don't know, it's what makes that power-up very addictive. And it's something that I don't think many people will actually find in their first playthrough, because I mean, like the little fire helix in the first mission, which again I'm not entirely sure how to do, but with this one I know for a fact that you just have to spin around and it'll freeze the object, I believe. But anyway, I suppose going back to the Gex development history, yeah, I was doing some research on TV tropes, which led me to a blog which I think was published in 1997. Which, you know, again, is going way back in terms of the internet, but, yeah, the guy's name was Greg Travers or something or other. He was the lead designer for the original Gex, and basically he recounted the story of what Gex was initially going to be for the first game, and basically a lot of the development hell issues that spawned from it, which there were numerous. To go into a bit more detail, however, was basically how it initially started off with just the same 4 people who were developing Crystal Dynamics' previous games, like Total Eclipse and Crash and Burn. But see, the thing of it is that both given the fact that Panasonic were wanting, you know, a game for the 3DO, plus the fact that, you know, the team was understaffed and some of the new members they had on as, you know, art designers and the secondary level designers were young and inexperienced, and as you can tell, that led to quite a lot of development issues, including another game designer, I think his name was Justin Knoll, I think? I might have to double check that, but I'll probably put a title up on screen in case I fuck that up in some way. Yeah, basically a lot of frustrations and a lot of cut features that were meant to be implemented into the game, such as the aforementioned mansion sections, but a lot of it was ultimately scrapped, and, you know, again, this includes some of the more famous elements that were cut from the first Gex game, like, you know, sci-fi levels and Planet X and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, in a general sense, a lot of assets, and I think even a secret ending, which involved seeing the pictures of all the developers of the game, was also cut. And that was actually because of a rather mean-spirited message he made to one of the heads of Crystal Dynamics, where Justin put in her actual phone number, and basically said, "You want to know what'll..." And I think the message said something along the lines of, "Did you see some cool shit in this Kung Fu level? Well, a lot of it was cut, so basically you can complain to..." Fuck, I forgot the woman's name. But, yeah, in a general sense, it basically posted her phone number and basically said, "Now you can basically complain to this person because they cared more about their own finances and wallets, rather than, you know, the consumer and the developer's satisfaction," which, again, mean-spirited, and it actually did result in him getting fired from Crystal Dynamics, which... tough to say how to feel about that, but I suppose it does give you a little bit more insight into how things can go in terms of game development, and exactly how, you know, the team dynamic would necessarily affect your working relationship. Which I think, especially in this day and age, especially since, you know, more and more stories are starting to come out about how things go during the development of games and everything, I think it's very interesting and something that I think should be showcased a little bit more often. Because again, it's a side of things that you don't really hear. Like, I mean, if you're talking about video game developments, you can hear all the time about people talking about, you know, cut content and what did make it and what didn't. But very rarely do you ever hear what goes on behind the scenes. And again, a lot of that is probably down to, you know, confidentiality issues. And, you know, I suppose just legal disputes and contracts and everything like that. Which, again, is understandable. But at the same time, though, you'd really like to know what exactly the situation was like back then. And again, of course, to direct the conversation back to Sonic once again, a similar example can be held with Sonic Extreme, with one of the developers on that game, basically recounting the development hell they faced, and basically all the pettiness that Yuji Naka, and the kind of the contempt that they had for using the Knights engine as the boss engine, which was then taken away, and it's basically just a whole mess of just garbage and executive meddling, really. Like, I mean, you know, it sounds like more bullshit than it really is, but at the same time, though, I mean, especially for, you know, people who want to get into the games industry and become, you know, developers and shit, it's the kind of thing where I think, at the very least, you know, newbies who are stepping into the field should really know what the hell they're getting into and just see what kind of practices are, you know, bullshit and how, you know, they could be screwed over, or, you know, what to avoid if they are developing for a game and they need to stay their tongue, I suppose. I don't know, there's just so much interesting stuff to learn about this kind of stuff, which, again, was very interesting to find out, actually. I was also doing a little bit more research into the boss enemies of this game on the Gex wiki as well, and one interesting article I stumbled upon with Mushu Pork is that apparently, and again, I'm not necessarily sure how reliable the wiki is, since I'm not necessarily quoting it from the game itself, and the game itself is already very fucking vague in terms of story and anything, but supposedly the story for Mushu Pork goes that he's apparently a rogue presence who's so vain about his appearance, perhaps even more so than Rez himself, that he apparently has his own device to travel into the media dimension, and because of that he's experimenting and likes to cut people up, which, again, considering where Gex was in his laboratory, is rather fucking dubious, and especially considering, you know, the tone of a lot of platformers back then is actually surprisingly fucking dark. Like, I mean, again, I know Gex, by any stretch of the, you know, context of his, you know, parodial nature, wouldn't necessarily be considered a kid's game. But at the same time, though, like, it's pretty heavy compared to how most people just view 90s platforms. Oh, look, it's happy the Wuzzle's the Wombat, he's jumping on the platforms because it's a jumpy game. I don't know. There's just a lot of darker aspects to platforms that I think a lot of people miss out on, and I think it's also a certain something that, I don't know, just a lot of people tend to forget and just prefer, like, looking at light-hearted visuals, because the Nintendos, and people love the Kirbys and the Marios. You know, those aren't the kind of platformers that I like, man. I like platformers that kick ass and shit, which is probably why I find myself so enamored with games like, you know, Jak and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank and shit. Also Sly Cooper. That one actually has a lot of cool and really dark shit hidden under the subtext, actually. Yes, that's enough of the Jerry Lewis stand-up Dana Gould. This level's coming to an end, and I didn't really commentate on Poltergeist that much. Then again, there wasn't really much to say, and it could have turned out like the previous thing level. I forgot what it was called. I think it was... I don't know. The previous Circuit Central level, which I just kind of rambled on for a little bit, looking for things to talk about, which I think I did kind of okay-ish. I don't know, I think I probably could have done better on that part.
Oh, yeah.
It's what? I think a line was supposed to play there, but it kind of glitched. It was supposed to say, oh yeah, it's tail time. But is it really tail time? Or is it not? Anyway, for the next couple of missions, well, not necessarily a couple of missions, we're basically going to be capping this part off, well, not capping it off. We basically just have a boss fight to go through, and a couple of bonus missions. I don't know, I didn't space these out correctly. What do you want from me, man? Now, yes, we have our Godzilla boss fight with GEXZILLA versus MECHAREZ, which I think you can obviously tell what this is mentioning. Yeah, pretty surprisingly easy boss battle for something this late in the game. Basically, you just wait for... You just hit Rez. Basically, whenever he attempts to charge you, you know, he's not supposed to hit you, right there. And basically, you just, when he's up in a building, just smash the building down, he crashes down, he loses a bit of health. Watch, rinse, repeat. It's not necessarily a hard boss fight, and I believe, you know, had things gone according to plan, this is where the Brain of Oz would have been, since, you know, that one's actually a pretty challenging boss in the third game. But in a general sense, though, MECHAREZ is, you know, kind of easy. Just don't let him charge at you, otherwise, you know, you're kind of pissed. Although he does get progressively faster, which is the slight saving grace, I suppose. I don't really have many Godzilla tangents I can probably bring off this, since I wasn't really a big Godzilla person. Although that being said, though, I think the only two Godzilla things I actually have seen are Final Wars and the 1998 movie with Matthew Broderick, famous for the line, "It's a lot of fish." I don't know, I mean, while it's not necessarily a good movie, I do enjoy Godzilla 98, just for being a fun movie. Although that being said, I do also find it equally entertaining seeing Godzilla, you know, versus regular Zilla when he was in Final Wars, and he was just tossed into the Sydney Opera House, and he was torched alive by the real Godzilla's atomic breath. I don't know, I just found it fun. Ooh, that's a pain. Yeah, it's kind of a dull boss fight, to be perfectly honest, but I don't know, I mean, while the set does look a little bit shit, and I think, you know, I don't know, it's just fun to see a Godzilla style level. I suppose it does actually make for a refreshing change in pace, I suppose, from all the other boss fights, where, you know, you're just regular Gex doing regular Gexy things. I don't know, just a little something different to change things up. Loading, we are still loading, all on our loading. We have our next cutscene tier missions. Well, I'd say cutscene trilogy missions, I should say, because the three television missions that you get on there contain cutscenes, which are, again, as you saw last time with the original, fuck, not original, what the fuck am I talking about? It's the, with the fucking prehistoric level, that's it. Again, as you saw with that level, it wasn't necessarily integral to the story, it was just kind of there, for reasons that I don't necessarily know why. I mean, again, if I could find another, you know, employee of Crystal Dynamics, you know, who could expound a little bit more light on the cutscenes and how exactly what things got cut and what kind of development hell this game suffered. I don't know, be interesting to know and talk about with this commentary. Anyway, we're coming up to another one of my favourite bonus missions, which is, again, going to the space theme, although there is a noticeable amount of Lost in Space references in this part. Well, not just Lost in Space though, I mean like plenty of stuff really, but I get a lot of Lost in Space vibes with this part though. Then again, that's mostly just because my father was a big fan of the original 60s show. Danger, Will Robinson and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I just like this level because of its ambience and also because of, you know, some of the level set pieces, like, you know, you see the Danger, Will Robinson robot. I don't actually know what the fuck it's called, but yeah, down spaceships and all that kind of garbage. I don't know, this level to me just looks nice. Well, then I also don't think it's anywhere near as, you know, long-winded as The Empire Strikes Out could be. Although, I think Pain in the Asteroids, which is a level we'll be getting to next part, is also a little bit bullshit, but nonetheless, that doesn't sully this level, and I enjoy it immensely. And the ending is right there. As you can see, the giant mothership. Yes, extend... Oh, the robot's just floating away. Oh dear. But anyway, that's us. There's also an interior to the spaceship, which I swear to God was reused. I think if it's not the Titanic level, I think it's actually another bonus mission that actually makes a reappearance in Gex 3. But we'll get to that whenever I get around to commentating on Gex 3, Enter the Gecko... Gex 3, Deep Cover Gecko. Fuck, it's starting to get myself tongue twisted. God, I mean, when will I do Gex 3? I don't know. Maybe in another 2 years or so. But again, we'll see what happens then. And this is a one bonus mission set in the Kung Fu theme, which I'm kind of disappointed about. I love, again, as I mentioned previously, I love the Kung Fu theme and I love the Chinatown aesthetic. Like, I mean in video games though, it just looks fantastic. I'd say, out of all the bonus missions I had the most trouble with on my first time playing, this one gave me the most trouble, usually because, you know, I wasn't necessarily sure where all the collectibles are or which places I could stop off that had collectibles or if any were hiding from me. Which, you know, was a bit of a pain in the ass, but again, if you know your way around and you just practice a little bit more, you'll nail it eventually. That being said though, I do love this bonus levels look in particular because, well, it has a nice nightly hue to it. I'd say it's kind of at like the midway point between where and again, I'm not necessarily sure how to describe it. It's like that midway point between, like, you know, nighttime, but at the same time the sun isn't quite rising yet, so it's like kind of like a nice middle hue. I'd say, I wouldn't necessarily say dawn or dusk or anything, just kind of like a prelude to that, but I'm not necessarily sure what the technical term for that would be called. I don't know, it's just so nice to see it, you know? Anyway, one more to get, and I think our promote's actually just over there. Anyway, now that we've finished this level, I am Skully, Cuban New Metal, and next time on Gex 3D Enter the Gecko, we will be doing a mission that is either a pain in the asteroids or, well, something new entirely. Catch you later, kiddies.
Nice try, big boy.